Welcome to This Explainer. We spend an immense amount of time analyzing markets, crunching the data, and formulating these absolutely brilliant strategic plans, only for them to just sit there collecting dust on a hard drive. Well, today we're diving into the absolutely crucial and often completely overlooked doing part of strategic management. We're going to bridge the execution gap, moving from just having a strategy to actually making it a reality. Seriously, look at this staggering number. 70%. Research actually shows that nearly 70% of strategies fail. And get this, it's not because the original plan was flawed or poorly thought out. No, it's due to poor implementation. Really think about that for a second. Even the most innovative, highly competitive strategies remain entirely theoretical, just ideas on paper without proper execution.
The management legend himself, Peter Drucker, hit the nail right on the head here. He said, plans are only good intentions unless they immediately degenerate into hard work. And honestly, that perfectly frames the stakes for us today. We are trying to solve a massive corporate failure rate by figuring out exactly how to turn those good intentions into tangible, hard-working realities.
Okay, let's look at our roadmap for today. 1. The execution gap. 2. The implementation process. 3. Overcoming barriers. 4. Culture and leadership. And finally, 5. Aligning structure. Let's jump right in.
Section 1. The execution gap.
So what exactly do we mean when we say a strategy is stuck in the gap? Well, to really get this, we have to contrast formulation with implementation. See, strategy formulation is all about making choices, right? It's deciding the what and the why. But strategy implementation, that's about translating those choices into action. It's the how and the who. While formulation is all about intent, implementation is what actually bridges the gap to operational reality. Without it, your most sophisticated plans are just expensive documents sitting on a desk.
Section 2. The implementation process. Now, take a look at this. It brilliantly illustrates the systematic staircase of implementation. It's a 9-step journey, starting way down at the bottom with step 1, translating those big strategic plans into specific, measurable objectives. And then it climbs all the way up to step 9, monitoring and control, where managers actually track the progress and adapt to any curveballs.
Now, to make that a bit easier to digest, we can actually condense that whole staircase into 5 critical phases. First up, you've got to understand the strategy and set clear objectives. Second, you develop the organizational structure and allocate your resources, your financial, human, and tech backbone. Third, design functional policies and plans. Fourth, build up your leadership and a supportive culture. And finally, you have to monitor and control the whole thing so you can course correct as needed. That right there is the chronological flow of execution.
Section 3. Overcoming implementation barriers. In the real world, let's be honest, execution is almost never a smooth ride. So you have to ask yourself, why do so many incredibly good strategies fail? If the formulation is sound, you've got the resources, and the market is practically begging for it, what actually stops a company from succeeding? Let's take a look. What's really interesting here is how the execution process is visualized like a rope riddled with knots. These knots, they are your major barriers. You've got poor leadership providing zero strategic direction, misaligned structure just creating total confusion, insufficient resources completely derailing the plan, weak communication causing massive delays, and of course, resistance to change from employees who are understandably fearing uncertainty. Honestly, hitting just one of these knots can completely halt your execution.
So how on earth do we untangle those knots? Well, successful organizations use some proven techniques to get things back on track. They open up honest, two-way communication channels. They make sure to fund their plans adequately. They empower strong leaders who can build an adaptive culture. They define crystal-clear roles to banish any ambiguity. And they set up continuous feedback loops. That way, problems are caught early, way before they turn into full-blown disasters.
Section 4. Culture and leadership.
Okay, let's shift gears and look at the deeply human elements driving all this, starting with Charles Handy's famous model of corporate culture. Handy identified 4 distinct cultural types. You have the power culture, which centralizes control. You see this a lot in small entrepreneurial firms. Then there's role culture, highly bureaucratic and rules-based, like a government department. Task culture focuses on team-based problem solving, which is perfect for project-based consultancies. And finally, person culture, which puts the individual at the center, typical in places like law firms. The big takeaway here? There is absolutely no one-size-fits-all. If you try to force a highly flexible task culture strategy inside a rigid role culture team, it's going to fail. For sure. Now, let's contrast Handy's approach with Deal and Kennedy's matrix, which offers another really fascinating lens. They map culture based on the level of risk and the speed of feedback. For example, a high-octane tough guy culture thrives on massive risk and lightning-fast feedback. Think high-stakes sales or the entertainment industry. On the complete opposite end of the spectrum, a process culture relies on low-risk and slow, methodical feedback, like what you'd find at a big traditional bank. This just goes to show how everyday practices dramatically shape organizational behavior and ultimately how well a strategy is executed.
But here's the thing. Culture doesn't just manage itself, right? It requires strategic leaders to actually guide it, and effective leaders tend to share some very specific characteristics. We're talking visionary thinking, decisiveness even when things are super uncertain, high emotional intelligence, adaptability, integrity, and a genuinely people-centric approach. But what's absolutely crucial to remember is that these traits aren't just something you're born with. They can be learned, developed through experience, and actively cultivated to guide teams through the whole messy reality of modern execution.
Section 5. Aligning structure.
Let's look at the physical reality of the company itself. The management historian Alfred Chandler famously said, "Structure follows strategy." Meaning, if you design a brilliant strategy but try to execute it within a structural blueprint that just doesn't match, say, trying to run a super agile, innovative tech strategy inside a rigid, top-down hierarchy, your chances of success are basically zero. A mismatch between your blueprint and your building practically guarantees failure.
And achieving true alignment? It is a massive juggling act. You have to align structurally, culturally, and strategically, sure, but you also have to align your processes, your resources, your people's actual skills, your technology infrastructure, your performance metrics, and even your governance mechanisms. It's not just a set-it-and-forget-it one-time fix. It's a continuous, dynamic process. As the environment shifts, your alignment has to adapt right along with it.
Which brings us to our final thought for today's explainer. I want you to think about the organization you work for right now, or maybe when you're studying. Is your company's structure actively supporting its strategy, or is it literally standing in its way? Remember, execution is where the real work begins. It's what transforms a vision into actual, real-world impact. So I'm going to leave you with that question to reflect on the execution gaps in your own world. Thanks so much for joining me today, and keep learning.